Hello and welcome back to Where Are All My Friends? This week's episode is with Adam LaRue, who is a friend that I have known for I think 10 years now. He is an artist manager, but has been in the music industry for a long time. He's worked at record labels, he's worked at tech startups involving advertising and music. He is a college professor who teaches about music, and for all those reasons, I'm very excited for y'all to hear this one. We specifically talk about not only Adam's story and how he got to where he's at now, but he shares a lot of advice on how to not get burnt out. And I think that that's a really important piece that all of us need to hear right now. I don't know why, I don't know how it is, but in the last year or so, the amount of people that I have talked to that feel burnout and that have just felt so exhausted and overworked is crazy. So everything he shared there was super insightful and super helpful. And on that note, let's get into it. Enjoy. Where are all my friends? Here we are, Adam LaRue, and it is about time that this episode is happening because we have been friends. I was thinking about this
a long time.
My first memory of our friendship was South by Southwest in Texas, and I don't remember the year. Maybe you do, but we met through our mutual friend Francesca Caldera, and I think that we were in line for.
We were eating. Maybe we were in line, but I thought we were eating lunch.
Okay.
At the Hilton.
Yeah, I just remember,
Yes.
All I remember of you was you had an app that could, or maybe it was just Twitter, but you had an account where you knew all the lines and like all of the like showcases, and I was This guy's on it.
Yeah.
And that was my first memory of you. I was like, this
great.
friendly guy is on it.
Yeah, when you first do South by Southwest, you got to do stuff like that. Now it's like, I don't even go. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm too old and grumpy.
You think it has to come back after pandemic?
I think somebody just bought it, like C3 bought it or something. So it's or maybe it's owned by Live Nation or AG. It's like some big company ended up buying it.
Like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy. Oh, okay. Well, nuts. Anyway, for a listener who doesn't know who you are and what you do, or for if we could go back to the past and tell Andrew in that food line that just met you who you are and what you do, what would you say in a quick summarization of who you are and what you do?
Well, right now I'm a manager.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a masochist. Yeah, I'm a manager. I manage Jerry Harrison from Talking Heads.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard of them.
And I co-manage the Talking Heads business entity.
Yep.
I represent Jerry's interests.
Mm-hmm.
I manage an artist named Gravitz. I manage a metal band from Australia called Dreg on Epitaph.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes, they have a tank in their video. It's
they
really
crushed
great.
a whole car with a tank.
They crushed the whole car with a tank.
Yeah.
Crazy Aussies.
Mm-hmm.
Who else do I have? I manage a couple writers, producers called Sharks.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of teaching. I teach college.
Yeah. Which is I was gonna say it's newer, but it's not actually. You've been teaching
5 or 6 years now.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, with this podcast, it's so funny. Like right before it started, I was like, it's always tricky with the people that have been in the game and done so much because it's a lot to cover in a little bit of time. But where I like to start is going back to like the OG days of you finding music or finding that spark of like the beginning of your career path, like where that is and the events that led up to that. I'm always so interested in that.
Yeah. After college, I went and got what I like to call my big boy job. And I worked for Safeway Corporation in the corporate offices.
Like the grocery store?
It was the grocery store. I worked in the corporate offices of the headquarters.
Oh, no shit.
And I was like the, for anyone old enough to remember, they called me the Dell Dude because I had like bleached white hair and like a dog chain. I was like this punk kid who just knew like HTML and all that stuff. Oh, this was 25 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, but I was managing ska bands in Orange County, like really mediocre ska bands in Orange County. And that was when like the ska scene was really, really big,
Yeah.
And it was just, that's how I just would go to shows. I mean, this was like when Chain Reaction wasn't even Chain Reaction yet, it was called Public Storage.
Was it the same spot?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
It was called
yeah.
Public Storage?
It was called Public Storage.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So, but then that means that you grew up in like the Southern California.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't
I'd
sure
go to
about
shows
that.
like when I was 15. I mean, I saw, Rancid and Green Day when I was like 15, when I was maybe 16, 17 years old, when I was the same age as they were.
Whoa, crazy.
Maybe I was a little bit older because I think because I'm 46 now. But yeah, I mean, I saw like Nirvana.
It's just so nuts. Like I think when we first met and like kind of some of my first impressions of you was I thought it was so cool that you had been in the game for so long. And
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We probably met.
It's been probably 10 years at least.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
So like, I just thought that was so cool that you had been in it and you had all these experiences from genuinely different eras of music.
Sure.
Because those stories to me, like I really like to look at the people that have been in it for a minute.
Yeah.
Because that rhymed. Because I feel like they have this perspective and this knowledge that you can learn from when you apply it. It's like, I can ask you all these questions about like when you were working on this project at this time, or like what like the culture was of this.
Sure.
And it all kind of continues to advance and apply to what we're doing now.
Well, and to your point, I'm kind of a music history geek.
You are.
And
you're always making me playlists of eras that I don't know. I'm like, I like The Cure, and you're like, that's funny. Here's what made this
right.
happen.
Here's what made The Cure happen. I read a ton of history books,
Mhm.
and it's really important, I think, for a music executive to know not just one or two generations prior to them, but 5 or 6 generations. The thing I'm obsessed about right now is the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, and how
that's music. That's
no. and how that spurred the Great Migration for everybody in the South to move up to the northern parts of the United States and then in the Midwest, and that's how it started. How soul started, and Motown and Stax was actually in Memphis, but Motown and all that stuff, and the Chicago scene where Mavis Staples and Curtis Mayfield and Sam Cooke and all these people came from. It was all because of the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 that spawned everything that happened up until in the 60s.
Holy shit. I legitimately thought you were about to troll me. I thought you started talking about the Mississippi Flood, and I was like, that's funny. You're just calling out random
history. The Mississippi River flooded and expanded like 100 miles in each direction. It was really crazy.
Dude.
It was a major disaster.
I don't doubt that. I don't know anything of it, but I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
So do you think that you found lessons like now as like, because you naturally just like studying that stuff, but like you legitimately have found lessons even as you look back?
Yeah, even practical lessons, when I started managing Jerry Harrison, he's 72 years old right now.
Yeah.
And I'm able to talk to him about things that happened when he was growing up, as far as music, and I connected with him on that level. Like I know about the Velvet Underground, and he was in the Modern Lovers prior to that, which is one of the bands that invented punk rock, really.
Yeah.
And so I talked all about the Modern Lovers. I know about all that stuff. And he's like, how do you know about this stuff? That's how I connect with artists, is that I can, especially legacy artists like Jerry and some of the artists I worked with, like at Anti, which is, I talked a lot about their generation because I knew it.
That's really cool. And I think it just shows that you genuinely love it.
Sure.
So, okay. So take me, so you were working Safeway, just going to shows, loving music for the sake of music.
And then I was making obscene amounts of money.
Really?
And it's just obscene amounts of money. And then they laid off like 8,000 people or something like a huge amount of people. Yeah. And I was like miserable in the job. I hated it. I was like a fish out of water because it was very conservative. I have to wear a tie every day, or an actual suit every day. I'm like, this sucks. I was laid off, and then I decided that I'm going to go in music full time.
Wow.
And then I started at Fearless Records as the publicist.
Holy shit.
And I had no idea what a publicist did. They just, I had friends there, and
I forgot you worked at Fearless.
And they said, we need a publicist. You want to join us? And I said, okay, sure. Twist my arm. I'll do it. And I went from making like $125,000 a year to $11.50 an hour. And
125K, you said 125?
Yeah.
And that time was even a bigger flex.
Yeah, that was in the 90s. Yeah.
That's fucking, that still can be doctor money, but that's like,
it was but I was so much happier. Like, I was miserable in that corporate job.
Yeah, that's a good lesson to learn early.
You know,
Holy
and
shit.
I worked at Fearless for a long time from the days of at the I mean, early there was like 5 of us there. You know, it was at the drive-in, it was Sugar Cult, it was Plain White Tees during the whole Hey There Delilah phase. It was Gatsby's American Dream, which you know Johnny, our friend Johnny loves, and discovered them. I mean, there was a lot of like developing artists as well. I mean, it was all developing artists at that point.
I legitimately forgot that was like an era of your career, and that's so huge. Like you were a part of like a massive piece of history for the label.
Yeah.
That's like the heyday of like the beginning of what gave Fearless like the cred that it has.
Sure. Yeah.
Holy shit. So, okay. So instantly you go from making ballin' money, but just knowing that you were unhappy, loving music, you get to Fearless and you're like, I don't give a shit about money. Like I'm just doing this thing that I love. I'll figure out the job.
Yeah.
And through that time, like because you didn't know the title publicist, did you have a feeling where you like, this is my end goal? Like this is it? Or was it just like, I mean, you didn't really care about the title?
I didn't care about the title. It was just, here's your job. You call up people and talk about your bands. Like, okay, I can do that.
Got it.
I have no fear. I don't have any problems calling any stranger up the phone and saying, hey, let's talk about my bands.
Right.
I had no problem with that. But I loved it. I had a lot of fun, and you know, and I created long lasting friendships with like all the AP people. Yeah. You know, this is when, you know, AP Alternative Press was in its prime.
Yeah.
It was just Mike Shea, who's the founder of Alternative Press, is a great friend to this day. You know,
right.
I became a lot of friends with, you know, people at Rolling Stone and Spin and
right, because you were doing publicity and like those,
but
such valuable relationships.
Here's the thing: there was 5 of us.
So you were doing a lot more.
I was
than
doing
PR.
A lot more than that. I was the radio guy. I was the quote unquote new media guy. This was pre-Facebook. This was pre-Twitter. This was right when YouTube had started, when I actually was placing ads on the front page of YouTube for like $1,000.
The front page of YouTube.
I mean, this was like right when YouTube had started. This was like, you know, MySpace, when even MySpace was type of a thing. But even before that, it was like Makeout Club. Do you remember Makeout Club? There were probably not many people remember Makeout Club. It was the first social network. You know, it was, you know, it was all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when print magazines were really a thing. But I was doing radio, I was doing publicity, I was doing new media. I was managing the street team when actually we would send stuff to people to hand out. Dude. You know, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was none of that stuff. So you couldn't do it digitally. It was all hand to hand.
It's crazy to me. Like as you're painting this picture in my head, I'm like, you couldn't ask for better real life experience. Like, what an era and what jobs to be new media at that time, like to be figuring that out and all of these pieces. Like that'd be like 2000, like mid 2000s, late.
No, 90.
Oh my.
99, maybe 2000 to, well, I started there, I believe, at the end of 99 and worked there all the way until 2006.
Oh my God. So that's like, you're the reason that me as a fan of music would see the shit that I would see in magazines.
Perhaps. I like to think that it was the bands that were the reason. It was the artists that was the reason. It wasn't necessarily me. I was just helped facilitate it.
It's nuts. Like, again, because you have that like generation on me, you have the years ahead of me. Like, I'm thinking about like those were the years where I was like finding music for the first time. Like that's like me getting like my first round of CDs of like the mail-in catalogs with the stickers, and I got Blink-182 and Green Day, and I was like, oh, and like
it's weird to think that this was more than 20 years ago because it feels just like yesterday to me. Does it? It really does. Yeah.
But you've always had that love of music. Like I feel like
sometimes I love it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I can always
talk
like
a lot about music and we'll get into it, I'm sure.
I feel like I'm just like always like prodding you for these stories, and like you don't look back, like you're not jaded about it. Like you're always happy to tell me these stories.
Sometimes
jaded. Fair.
I love telling stories though. So yeah.
Another piece. So you hold it down at Fearless, and we could probably do just an episode on that, but I think you painted that well. I know at a certain point you go to a company called IndieClick, and I think that's like maybe like around when I met you.
Yeah,
right
yeah. I was
after.
probably at IndieClick at the time, and IndieClick was interesting because again, it was a small company. I was probably the fifth or sixth employee there. We were an entertainment marketing firm. You know, major labels, indie labels would come to us and say, "I've got $10,000 to spend, $50,000 to spend, $100,000 to spend.
Yeah.
Tell us how to spend it."
Yeah.
And then we would tell them how to spend it, and then we would spend it in our network of like, you know, we would go to like, we would give Jason Tate Absolute Punk a bunch of money and say, hey, put ads on it. You know, we were representing Absolute Punk and Pure Volume. Remember Pure Volume, you know, and all that stuff. Like, and so we were doing a lot of advertising, media planning, and a lot of marketing consulting. And I became like the head of the music division. I was dealing with everything. I did Lady Gaga campaigns. I did Bieber campaigns. I did Blink-182 campaigns. Gosh, I mean, tons of, you name the artist, I probably had something to do with it, where the major labels would come to us and even the indie labels would come to us and say, hey, you know, can you help us with this?
Holy crap.
This was also during the time when, you know, illegal downloading was in full force.
Interesting.
And so there was a huge headcount cut at record labels. So record labels didn't have the band, at the record labels didn't have the bandwidth to do all that stuff. And that's where we came in to be able to do, to kind of fill in the gap that their headcount, their staff couldn't do.
What a great point to make to paint that picture. Because yeah, like labels at that time probably were struggling.
Really contracted. Yeah.
And like, it was not like the glory days of labels where there was budget for everything. So for a company to come in and like, we can just run this.
Right.
It was really a great timing.
Right. And there was no budget. I mean, this was like squeezing blood out of stone for a lot of that stuff because, but it was, you know, it was fine. Like, you know, I used all my training and all my contacts, all the record labels to bring in a lot of new business.
Yeah. Wow. So you were valuable. Like everything that you had done. Did I miss any steps? Like, did it go Fearless straight to IndieClick?
Yeah, it went straight to IndieClick. Yeah. Okay. I got burned out at Fearless. Like I got to the point where, you know, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was struggling. I was using IndieClick actually as a vendor of mine when I was at Fearless, and made friends with them. And the president, she just said, well, why don't you just come work for me?
Whoa.
And I thought about it. I said, why don't I? You know, I was, you know, really, I was just burned out. I was, you know, going to shows a lot. And, you know, I was making ends meet. I was like bartending at a gay bar. You know, I was doing all that stuff just to like a couple of days a week, just to pay my bills.
Wait.
And pay more parking tickets.
Oh, during the Fearless days.
Right.
Because as happy and as fulfilled as you were, that was still huge pay cut.
Right. Huge pay cut.
And I'm sure like that is when the industry was contracting in record sales. Yeah, so like it's not like you were like thriving and like balling outrageous.
No, I wasn't making a ton of money at all. And it was really my first real job in the music business. I was managing ska bands, you know, in Orange County prior to that, but it wasn't real, you know. It wasn't, you know, there wasn't a lot of stuff really kind of going on. You know, I thought I knew what the hell I was doing, but I really didn't.
Didn't you have a blog too at one point, like a music blog?
Yeah, I started it was a message board. This is when message boards were big.
Oh, crazy! Like a forum.
It was a blog. It was a what's that?
Is it
like a forum? Right.
Yeah,
right.
Okay, I call it. And a forum.
It was queerpunks.com because I was this out gay dude who didn't know really any other gay dudes in the scene.
Right. Because again, we talk about like a different time. Like that was probably a whole different scene. Because now it's like so accepted. It's just like, yeah, dude, what up? Cool. Like,
yeah. And you know, I was the token homo, you know?
Really?
And so started it and I got all these great people, you know, Larry Livermore from Lookout Records, which I don't know if you know Lookout Records, but they were the ones who signed Green Day early on. And the Donnas and Op Ivy and all that stuff. But I got a lot of like queer icons. Henry Rollins, who's not LGBTQ as far as I know, but he contributed stuff, you know, but the big thing was the message board. It was everybody from around the world, but really in the United States were going on the message boards and the forums to talk music, you know, but you know, and be gay at the same time.
Dude, like I'm thinking about that and I'm just like, that's fucking cool, dude. You made a community. Like where there maybe wasn't a community.
I did,
there.
and it was around for a really long time,
dude.
Yeah, and then I got hacked in it, and then that was a whole long story. But But and then it was just became too much, and I shut the site down. Like, but I had it around for probably a good 8 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that that's really cool. Like something to me that I've always loved about music since like my first kind of going to shows, like DIY shows, is the feeling of community. It's like feeling like an outcast and then finding something where you like fit in. So I can only imagine to like go back to a whole different scene where like being gay in this scene maybe wasn't as accepted or outwardly taught. I don't know.
It was accepted. I never really necessarily felt threatened or any of that stuff. You know, it was early on. I had a lot of friends and a lot of support.
Good, cool.
But there weren't necessarily a lot of other people out, you know, there.
Yeah.
You know, in the scene that I knew of, at least.
Yeah.
The community was small.
I just think that's cool. Like all of that was to say that like I think community in music is one of the most important, most magical things about it. So the fact that you added something to that in your own way that's so close to you is like another level of respect. And I didn't know that. I did not know. I knew that I thought you had a blog. I thought you just wrote about stuff. I had no idea.
Yeah. And then at that time, interesting enough, when you talk about community, you could go to anybody could go to Chain Reaction alone and probably find 5 of their friends there.
No shit.
You know, I used to go to Chain Reaction all the time, to the point where you know, I got in free, especially when I was working at Fearless. If there wasn't a show that I had to go to and I wanted to go see a show, I would just walk in. You know, they knew me. Yeah. I would just go alone and I would see 10 people I knew there. I'd be, hey, you know, community. Like, and everyone was like that. It was just really a neat place. I equated to like CBGBs of the West Coast. Because and I think it's that legendary because there's so many great artists that went through there, not only playing but as, you know, spectators or you know, and just industry people and all that stuff. It was a really fun time.
You know what's cool is like even as like my generation, like being 30 now, like ever since touring, I knew of like West Coast, I knew Chain Reaction. I knew that was the spot.
Yeah.
And then going there, being able to like start touring with bands and having shows there, I knew it was special. And even to this day, like pre-pandemic, it just always feels special. Like you just know it's like this is a
the
special
t-shirts on the
place.
walls
like,
and all that stuff. It was really neat. Yeah.
It's crazy that like the community never left there. I like that a lot. And it's cool to hear that it goes that far back.
Yeah.
Okay, so damn, you're doing that. You get a little bit burnt out at Fearless.
I go to IndieClick.
Yeah.
I start making money, and then we were acquired at like 5 or 6 years in. We were acquired for a lot of money. I'm not going to say, you know, and then we went to a parent company, and about 18 months after we were acquired, they shut us down.
Really?
And so I was like, all right, fuck it. Fuck you. You know, what's that scene in whatever? Fuck you. Oh,
you're
Waiting?
Cool.
Fuck you.
Yeah. I'm
fuck
out.
You.
Fuck yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah. I think it's is it Waiting?
I don't
was
think
just
it's Waiting.
talking about that.
I don't know what it was, but I want to say it was like Dazed and Confused or something like that. But
no, dude, it's more recent than that.
I don't know, whatever it was.
Okay, whatever.
We'll have to figure it out. Dude, research.
Welcome to Where Are All My Friends? It's now a movie podcast.
Yeah. But I was just like, okay, you know, and I was making a ton of money again. And I wasn't necessarily happy doing what I was doing. Again, I just kind of got burned out on it again because I wasn't necessarily fulfilled. And then I was kind of fucked around for 6 months and traveled and did whatever the hell I wanted to do. I call it my summer of George, if you use the Seinfeld reference.
But was that was like the S4 days too, huh? That was you getting into some money and like.
Yeah, it was. I bought my S4 during that time, right? Mm-hmm. And then I left IndieClick and decided to downsize to an A4. We can edit this out. This is car. Yeah.
I think like my listeners know enough. Yeah. Like they know I like a little bit of car.
But then I got a call from Epitaph. I heard that there was an opening, and I knew the general manager. I knew everybody at Epitaph, really. And I submitted a resume, and I interviewed, and I was driving home after the interview, and they called me up, and they said, "We want to hire you."
Oh shit!
And I said, "Okay, twist my arm. I'm there." and this is where my knowledge of music history helped me out again, because the president of Anti Records, him and I really bonded over like jazz, like, like old jazz guitar players from the 1930s,
Mm-hmm.
and, and
some deep cuts.
Right. It was, it was just one of those things. I knew everything that was going on in the music business because of IndieClick. I was working with all these labels. Everyone would tell me gossip and all that stuff. So I had my finger on the pulse. I knew what was going on. And then when, Epitaph was an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. And that's definitely like, I feel like we became even closer friends around that time because it was like you were kind of back at it. You were like back in the scene. And that was like when I was like, maybe I was working in an indie label or maybe I was managing, but like you had like kind of even become a bit of a mentor in those days and you were in it as well. And that was a cool little
I was
there.
deep in it. I was neck deep, not the band, but I was neck deep in it. Yeah. South by every year, like at artists playing and I was going to shows all the time and it was like, these are big artists. Like I was working on Rancid records and and stuff like that. So
that's cool too. I didn't think about it, but like you doing that, like that chapter of your life is pretty cool because it still ties into your exact same punk community and all that. Like what a perfect fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then that's what, God, you've done so much.
Well, I left Epitaph. I was only there for a couple years. And I left Epitaph and went to go work with the Maddens.
Okay, and then those are the management days.
The management days.
Yes.
And when I left Epitaph, I was kind of really disillusioned with working in music. And there was a point in time where I thought, maybe I don't want to work in music anymore.
Yeah.
But music's like the mafia. And there's two analogies I have. Music is like the mafia, but it's also like an abusive relationship. Like you try to leave music and music says, you can't leave me. Nobody's going to love you like I do. And you're like, yeah, you're right.
That, dude, I hate how accurate that is.
And then music pushes you down the stairs and breaks your arm. And I know this is a really bad analogy.
So
I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but
if you're in a relationship like this, leave.
Yes, please leave. But music pushes you down the stairs and breaks your arm. And he says, I'm sorry, baby, but you just make me so mad. I'll make it up to you. Here's a platinum record. And you're like, okay, I'll stay. And then you're like, you're done. You're fed up. And music says, you can't leave me. We got to stay together for the kids. And you're like, oh, fuck, you're right. And it's just like, it's a big abusive relationship. But it's also like the mafia where it's a bunch of like, good fellas hanging out. Like if you think like the chain reaction is the mob hideout and all the good fellas are there hanging out and you have your certain levels of mafia dons and whatever. It's, but it is, and there's what's that scene in Godfather 3 or whatever, where he says, as soon as I think I'm done, they pull me right back in,
Wait, so is it a movie podcast? Cause we could,
there you go. But there's certain times where I think, man, why did I just become a computer programmer?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's certain times where I feel like I can't do anything else. I tell them I shrink this all the time. It's like I just don't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah. Well, especially because you experienced something else very early in your life. Like
sure.
You had that job where you made money and then you went to a job where you made relatively no money, but felt so happy.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that like,
I felt like I was making an impact on something.
Exactly.
I was doing something for somebody else. That was really cool. And, to see my artists, like, when Plain White Tees, went #1 in the nation for Hey There Delilah, I thought, this is fucking cool.
Too.
This is great. Like, and then of course, even before that, when At the Drive-In, At the Drive-In was touring with, Rage Against the Machine. They were opening for Rage Against the Machine. And, the Bono and The Edge were on MTV saying that At the Drive-In was the best band of this generation and stuff like that. You're sitting at this record label, we're all looking at each other like, did we just hear that? Like,
you're like, what? This is our artist?
This is crazy.
What? Yeah.
This is insanity.
Yeah. Fuck, man, that's so nuts. But I get it. I totally get it. And not to shortcut or to too quickly cut through your management, but you kind of turned a page and got deeper into management.
Yeah.
And though you've like worked with different companies, a huge amount of your life now is, like we said in the beginning, managing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess just to conclude that, like, as you look at it now, do you find it more fulfilling than label life? Like, is that just like the logical
Ask me in an
progression?
hour and I'll give you a different answer.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, because it's such a weird roller coaster. It's not even a roller coaster. It's even more wilder than that. I like it because I'm the master of my own destiny, and I can pick the artists that I work with, and I have the luxury of picking artists that not only do I like musically, but I like as humans. Where there's certain times where I was managing artists where I didn't necessarily really like the humans all that much.
Yeah, and you're kind of stuck to it because you're married to your label,
right?
Like you do what's
right,
the best
and
for your
but
label.
but also like when I was working, with a certain management company, which will remain nameless. But you know who I'm talking about.
I have no idea.
The artists that I was working with, the humans weren't necessarily all that great, and they had, and I me, I'm kind of bluntly, honest with some people, and I would tell artists, with huge egos, I would say, you're not big enough to have an ego yet. They were selling out 3,000 cap rooms, and I'd say, you're not big enough to have an ego yet. Check your ego. You know who you are if you're listening to this. I doubt they are because it's kind of scorched earth. But yeah, you're not big enough to have an ego. And that's the thing that I've learned throughout my whole thing in the industry is that if you work in the music business, you can't have an ego. And everyone has an ego. I have an ego. We all have egos. But the more you check your ego, the better off you're going to be. That's how I've survived for so long, is that I check my ego out the door. I can't take things personally. There's certain grudges I do hold. Miley Cyrus, you are. I'll tell that story later if you want.
I would be so thrilled if Miley Cyrus listened to this podcast and like we got in trouble because of that.
Sure.
I would love for
I've already
Miley
called
Cyrus
her mom the C word, so
to just hit me up and be like,
yeah,
fuck you for airing that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Anyway, but the ego is like just a killer. When it comes to the music business. There are certain times where I've gotten fired by clients and I think, God, this fucking sucks. And especially when you have like a good personal relationship with these people, and it's like you're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
But the more you think, okay, this is the business decision by them. It may be my fault, but it may not. It's their thing. It's not me.
Yeah. A way that I've always thought about it is like, you become so passionate about the projects you work on and you're so invested in these artists. But again, to your point of like leaving your ego aside, at the end of the day, you're not the artist. Like you're working with the artist and you're helping them facilitate.
I tell artists this all the time when they ask me things about their records and stuff. And I say, hey, you're the one who has to live with this record for the rest of your life. I don't.
Right. Like you're there to help facilitate and to get it out to as many eyes and ears and do everything you can. But like, you're really helping somebody build this creation. And I think that like, using the example of like a manager getting fired or no longer seeing eye to eye, it's like, ultimately that's just the artist, like doing what they see that they need to do for the art or the alignment of that.
And every artist is on their own different path.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that. And artists have to recognize that as well, that they're all on their own separate path. They can't compare themselves to other artists. And you get that a lot,
So kind of what I'm hearing in like the discussion of like what's better or more fulfilling, label versus management, is almost like choosing your tribe and choosing your people.
Yeah.
Because either one can be good if you have your perfect team and your people, and either one can be bad if you're with the wrong people.
Sure. No doubt about that. I mean, I'll tell you this. I probably wouldn't be a manager today if I didn't have that label experience.
Yeah. Wow.
And because and when the stuff that I learned at Fearless and the stuff I learned at IndieClick, and especially the stuff I learned at Epitaph, I worked with, I think, especially at Epitaph, some of the best people in the business. I have a band on Epitaph right now, and I think that they're great, and I learned a lot from them. And I don't think if I was at Epitaph that I probably would be I don't think it would be nearly as effective as a manager.
Yeah, that's cool. I felt like in my much less time in the game than you, but I agree with you that if I had not toured with bands and then worked at a label for the time that I was managing artists, I wouldn't have understood it the same way.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been able to accomplish and get certain things done for my artist, because not only could I like speak a little bit more label speak, but I had a certain empathy of being like, I'm not
exactly
going to roast the digital guy. Like he's over here like with all these different projects and, you know, like our A&R, like she's got all of this going on, and I'm going to come to you and tell you that like, this isn't acceptable. Like, no, you're going to bat for me every day. And like, I think that understanding the ecosystem of that was really important.
It helped me with marketing as well, and really understanding the lifestyle, the life cycle of an actual release from a label perspective. That helped me, you know, because labels, you know, anybody can release an album now without a label, and to have that kind of experience, almost a dogmatic approach to things, pushed me in a positive direction. And when I say Epitaph, also just clarification, I also mean Anti Records, which was their sister label,
right?
Which, you know, there's, you know, Wilco, Nico Case, Mavis Staples, a lot of huge artists, Glenn Hanser, Dr. Dog, you know, everybody.
Yeah, I didn't realize Dr. Dog. That's funny.
Dr. Dog was on it.
Crazy.
So there was a lot of like, you know, it wasn't just the punk rock scene, but it was the indie rock scene. It was the soul, like Mavis is a soul legend, and to work with her and all that stuff is, you know, and just as a side story, Mavis Staples, #1, is my favorite artist I've ever worked with in my whole life.
Wow.
She's probably the best human I've ever met in my whole life.
Holy shit.
She's just great. She's just wonderful. Dealing with the managers as well, and dealing with some great managers really helped me and put me in a good position to be a manager myself.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And that's good advice. Like, again, I love hearing those things from you, because like you have time in the game to really speak to that, and it holds more weight.
Yeah. 26 years now.
So crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So the other piece is you started teaching, and you teach at 2 schools?
Yeah. I teach at the LA College of Music in Pasadena.
Yep.
And I teach at UCLA.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's made me really like music again.
Really?
And really actually made me not just like music, but like the music business again.
Interesting.
And, you know, there's a saying that for you to really know about a subject is to teach it, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, like the UCLA class I teach is about artist management. And I learn just as much from my students as they learn from me.
Yeah.
It's made me really go on deep dives and talk to other managers, and you know, I have a lot of guest speakers in my class and stuff, and I always learn something from them. But it's, you know, it's fun. It's fun to see young, aspiring or even current music industry people really trying to do things.
Yeah. That's funny. I feel that spiritually because of the podcast.
Yeah.
Like I feel the same way. It's like I'm so selfishly, like every week I get to hear someone else's story and ask them any question and learn from these people that I admire so much. And then the idea that like other people can learn through that. And then seeing some of my listeners and some of the people that I've met through the podcast and the friends that I've made, like looking at what they're doing, I'm like, what? Like you're killing it. Like this is so sick. So it's so funny.
It's
like
still
I
weird to be
that.
considered a college professor.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, it's really weird to be considered a college professor.
Right. You're just like a chilling punk rock dude.
I don't think I'm punk rock anymore. But you know, I'm just a dude, but it's still weird to be considered a professor of, you know, of anything. Yes. Let alone music or parts of music. It's just kind of surreal, but I love it because I feel like I'm teaching the next generation of music business executives. Not everyone's going to be a music business person. Mm-hmm. And some of these classes, you know, these people say, well, I had a way different idea of what the music business is like, and maybe this isn't for me or something like that. But, you know, I want to teach them how not to be the future douchebags of America.
Dude, yes.
You know, and look, I gotta be honest with you, I've had a ton of douchebag moments in my life, you know, and especially when I was younger, I've done some really douchey things.
Yeah.
And that's just part of growing is knowing, when somebody calls you out and said, you're a fucking asshole. And you're like, and you think, and then 5 years down the line, you think, yeah, I was an asshole.
Right.
Yeah. It's part of growing as a human, but still.
But the self-awareness to look back at that and also be able to teach a class and be like, here's where I fucked up.
Yeah,
here's
exactly.
Where
I've done that. I've told a lot of the stories about, hey, this is what I did and this is why you shouldn't do this. And these were the consequences.
What are some of the most common questions that you get? Like, what are students asking? What do you find yourself paying attention to the most?
One thing I always hear is, how do I market myself? And I say, you don't market yourself. You market your output. And in aggregate, that's marketing yourself. Every single thing that you put out there, your music videos, your singles, your remixes and all that stuff, your name is attached to that. And you market those individual pieces of content. And all those pieces of content combined are you. But if you think about it, if you think, how do I market myself? Well, you're a whole human being, and it's kind of a daunting idea to think, how do I market a whole human being?
Right. Yeah.
But if you market your output, and you chop it down to these individual things that you're actually working on and putting out,
right?
Then it's easier to tackle and easier to put your head around, I think.
That's really cool advice, actually. Like, that's such a big question to answer, but I really like the way that you said that.
Yeah.
And I also, as I think about that, I've never looked at it like that, but a quote that I live with, or an idea mindset is like, anything you do it as though you are a professional.
Sure.
And I think that you could very easily stack that onto what
professional
you just said.
What?
Just anything. Like, it's like, if you're putting out content, if you're the front man or front person of anything, then it's like, you're a pro. Like, you're the best there was.
Yeah.
If you're doing your first round of Facebook or Google ads, you do the research to be a pro at it. Like, you just do it as if you are a pro.
Yeah.
And I think that adding that, I've never heard anyone explain it quite like you, but I'm like, damn, that's sick. That's a good combo right there.
Yeah.
That's cool. Another piece that I wanted to talk about, and I know you teach about this a bit, you talk about it, is burnout.
Oh yeah.
And it rings in my head, and I get so mad at you because I'll be burnt out on something, and I'll hear your voice and you saying to me years ago, don't burn yourself out.
Right.
And every time I feel burnt out, I'm like, fuck you, Adam LaRue. You don't know me. You don't know me. I'm not burnt out. And
I mean, I've suffered from burnout quite a few times,
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where I would drive to the office and I would literally be in tears and want to go home.
Really?
Burnout, and it creeps up on you.
Yeah,
you don't know you're burning out until you're burned out.
Dude.
And then it's too late.
Dude.
Yeah, and part of burnout, especially in the music business, is also part of your identity, because so many people who work in the music business, and I'm guilty of this as well, I have to say, is that their whole identity is wrapped around them working in music. And they work so much in music, and it's part of their identity, so they don't know what else to do. And it ends up being really kind of toxic to them at the end. There's parts of my life where I didn't go, I probably spent 2 years or 3 years not listening to music. I would listen to audiobooks because it felt like work.
Yeah.
And or not listening to new music and just kind of knowing about it, and, driving to work in tears and thinking, I can't do this, and turning around and going home, and just, there's a part of burnout that goes hand in hand with clinical depression.
Yeah.
And so it was there were plenty times where I just didn't want to do this. With the help of therapy for many years now. By the way, if you don't see a shrink, you should see a shrink. It's very helpful. I've made a point not to necessarily try to tie my identity to my job, and to take times and to set boundaries with my artists, and to set boundaries with myself even, and not, at 7:00 at night, my computer shuts down and I'm watching Jeopardy.
You like your Jeopardy. I
love my
know
Jeopardy.
that about you.
Yeah. And I'm not answering emails. And maybe I'll look at my email at like 10 o'clock at night or whatever like that. But I'm not answering emails. Anything that can be answered will happen at 7 a.m. in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's going to die if an email doesn't get answered.
Right. Like you said that thing to me one time of like, this isn't brain surgery.
It's not. We're
Like,
not. It's
no
not
one
life
is
or
going
death
to die.
situation here.
But okay, so to play devil's advocate there, and I mean, I have run myself too far. I've pushed
Sure.
it too far, and I
Right.
have very much experienced burnout myself. But something that I'm curious your take on this, because I also think that in this day and age, people are becoming too soft and they're not understanding what it takes to like actually accomplish
No
your
doubt.
goals, and to like hard work
Yeah.
means working past a set 8 hours.
But there's
and
no
it means-
glory in working 80 hours a week.
right?
There's so many people I know who brag about, oh, I work 70 hours or 80 hours a week. Why?
Right. Well, so where I look at it is I kind of have this idea in my head of like, do it to be it, not to do it. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is like, if you want to be the world's biggest artist, if you want to be the best podcaster, the best manager, to save yourself spinning your wheels and doing just work for the sake of work, really paint the picture of like, what does the best manager look like? What does the best podcaster, the best artist? And every hour that you put into it, work towards that goal and remember the target, remember that
Sure.
post.
No doubt.
Not just getting caught up in the like, oh, I'm a manager, so I need to send emails today and
Yeah.
like this, and this. And like you kind of get into this like dirtle of just doing things, going through the motions.
Yeah, it's the hamster wheel.
Yes. So I
Yeah.
think that that's helped me a lot.
Sure.
But I'm just curious of like how you determine and how you find that balance. And again, like you're further along in your career and you've kind of like
I have
established
the
these,
luxury to say that.
Right, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of my listeners are like a similar age as myself, or maybe a little bit younger, but it's like a lot of people that are like really trying to make their mark and like establish themselves
Sure.
in their beginning of their career. And
But you can't work 80 hours a week for a straight year.
no,
Maybe once 1 week, you're working a lot and you have to do all that stuff. So be it. That's fine.
Mhm.
But there are people who are working 8 hours a week on Saturday and Sunday
Yeah.
after they've worked, their 60 hours a week during the. It's like, somebody at Epitaph, Jeff at Epitaph told me this, gave me this analogy. I really, really like it. It's like a knife. And the more you use it, the more dull it gets.
Yep.
You have to sharpen it.
yes,
And the only way to sharpen it is to take it out of commission for a while and have it fixed.
yes, yeah, that's a great simple analogy.
Yeah.
honestly.
Working 8 hours a week, every once in a while is part of working in the music business.
Yes,
But, you can't do that for a prolonged amount of time. I don't
Yeah.
care who you are or how young you are or how
Yeah.
sharp you are or any of that stuff. You just can't do it.
right. Or even like I'm thinking about like when touring comes back, like any artists that go on the road is like when you're on tour, like your hours are crazy and
Yeah.
you're just putting your heart and soul into every day and
Touring's
every
hard. Like,
But
yeah.
come home and rest
Yeah.
and like actually like give yourself like find those times, because like that's a huge one. It's like artists.
I
on
talk
tour
about
can-
Bieber all the time.
Oh yeah.
Where this kid from age 12 to age 20 toured constantly
That's right.
and didn't necessarily really have a break. If he
Yeah.
wasn't on tour, he was in the studio.
mm-hmm.
And he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't burn himself out. The people burned him out.
Sure. Yeah. Like when you're that young, like,
Yeah.
you have a lot of people.
And he started acting out because of it.
right.
But it's not just kids, it's adults, and adults act out in different ways than kids do, you know?
Yeah.
And whether it's like road rage or
Right.
or just depression or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that there is an internal compass there. Like you
Sure.
can kind of catch it. Like you're like starting to just be on tilt and angry about things that normally don't upset you, or get upset about other things, or just like start to feel that you're not stoked. And I also think that you can have those honest like check engine lights of life and be like, okay, we don't need to run it to the ground. Like I'm noticing signs.
Yeah.
Take a break.
It's
And
hard
that's-
to, and this is where like having friends and having people say your grip is a little bit too tight. And maybe you need to go take a vacation.
Yeah.
Or a staycation or whatever you need to do, just, if you're gone for 2 weeks, the world isn't going to burn down. Your artist can survive 2 weeks without you.
Mm-hmm. Again, coming back to like, this isn't brain surgery.
Yeah.
And also too, I think like a lot of times it can be really hard to just speak up and be like, yo, I'm struggling a little bit right now.
Sure.
But I mean, if I had any friend, anyone that I work with that came to me and said that, I'd be like, yo, go do your thing. Like, we'll figure this out.
Totally.
So maybe there is also those times where in your head, you paint the picture of like, the world will stop without me.
There's a culture also in the United States where people are afraid to take vacations.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, in Europe, in certain countries in Europe, it's mandatory that you get 4 weeks paid vacation and people take it. And in the United States, it's different. It's people think that vacations, are a luxury and not a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
But you need it, and people feel really bad to ask for a vacation, because they feel they're letting their jobs down and there's this, that they're not loyal or whatever it is. And I say, fuck that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So another piece that I wanted to ask is, again, if we're like reverse engineering and playing a little bit of devil's advocate, it's not devil's advocate, but let's play the role of, you're listening to this podcast, you're totally on board, and you're like, yeah, damn, like I need to understand burnout. I need to be aware of it, and I need to be mindful of that. So maybe we could talk about etiquette of, if you're an artist, or like if you are working with industry and you don't want to burn out a fellow pal like Adam LaRue, what's some etiquette that artists could do or think with? Like maybe you're newer to the industry and you're just now working with a team. How do you keep your team loving you?
It's about understanding that these people are humans just like you, and they're not machines. They're part of your team. Your management and your team in general is no good to you if they're burned out.
Yeah.
And by the same token, your artist is no good to you if they're burned out as well. And so both manager and artist have to realize that there are boundaries. And I'm not saying that, don't answer that call at 10 p.m., especially if your artist is on tour and all that stuff. I had an artist, I'm not going to name the names, but literally called me 4 times a day, 5 times a day. What's going on? What are you doing? What's happening? And this person was a really young artist. But I discovered him when he was 16, and now he's 30 some years old. When he was 16 to 20 years old, I got him signed to a major label. He was really kind of like wondering, what's going on? What are you doing? And it was like kind of like a weird little brother situation. But at the same time, I coddled him, which was wrong. And I didn't set boundaries. And he would call me constantly. You have to give your team time to make things happen. You have to give your team an opportunity to stay sharp. You can't flip out and be like, why are you leaving me for 2 weeks?
Right.
Why aren't you coming to my New York show? It's your mom's birthday. I don't care. You need to be here.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Somebody actually told me that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is an interesting thing. It's like the same way as a manager, you have to check your ego and be like, I'm not the artist and I'm here to facilitate that.
Yeah.
The artist has to remember too, like, this isn't just your like peon employee. Like, this is your ride or die here.
Right.
Like, y'all are going to battle together.
Most definitely. And like I said before, I've told artists, you're not big enough to have an ego.
Mm-hmm.
And don't talk to me like that. I'm not your employee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person who's fighting for you.
Yeah.
I had another artist who, called me up and said, I left my hat and my vape pen in an Uber. Can you go track it down for me?
Oh,
and
like
this is one of these artists.
This
is one of these artists who were they were bad humans.
Yeah.
I just told them, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. My job isn't to go hunt down your hat and your vape pen. My job is to maximize your career and make you money. I'm not monetizing you if I'm spending 3 hours hunting down a vape pen and a hat and an Uber.
You know, that also makes me think I'm not going to be able to remember the book, but like talking about an executive type book where it's like how to empower your employees. And if you're going to be a good executive, you want to find the absolute strengths of your employees, like find their superpower, find the thing that they're the best at, and give them as much time as they can to do that and take things away. And that applies both to an artist and a manager. So if an artist is doing that and they're being the executive, like, is that really the best way to empower your employee to be like, go get my vape pen? Like, no, like that's not your superpower. Right. You're not a PA. Like, so it's like thinking as an artist, you can be like, how can I give Adam all of the platform and all of the time? Like, how can I ask him the least questions about this, but just give him all of this? I don't mind questions.
Here. That's the thing.
Or sure, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But then also too, for you as a manager, you could also look and be like, okay, cool. My artist shines when they are in the studio specifically writing. Like that's their spot. How can I block out all the other distractions and get them there?
I'm doing that right now with Grabbits. Is, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of great things, and it's about keeping him on task.
Yeah.
And really kind of getting in the weeds when it's fine to get in the weeds. But you know, as a manager, you still have to look at big picture. But it's okay to get in the weeds with your artist and say, you know, this is your to-do list.
Right. Yeah.
Stay focused. Yeah. Don't worry about the poster, or don't worry about you know, any of this stuff. This stuff will be taken care of. Just do what you need to do.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I just think that like that idea and just that give and take of like finding that dynamic. And I guess you could even come back to and bring that back to what you were talking about like how you've worked with great people and crappy people, both at labels and management. It's like when you have that rapport and that dynamic with your people, that comes a lot more naturally. And you're probably going to get asked less to get Uber or vape pens out of Ubers when you just naturally are friends and have a respect for each other.
Yeah, totally. You know, that's a great point, is that, you know, the artists that just don't have respect for you in general, not just respect for your boundaries, but respect for you in general.
Yeah.
You know, and this artist in particular just didn't have respect for me.
Right. You know, it's like, that's so okay. It's like, you're not always going to get along and whatever. Like maybe there's an artist that you're not going to respect the project, but like you can do everyone the favor and just not work together, and that's fine. The world will go on. But I think that like respect is such a powerful thing.
It's a huge thing. And, you know, and this artist, you know, I this is really a shitty thing to say, but I have a little bit of schadenfreude because this artist, you know, is a shell of what they used to be. And I think it's partly because they're not necessarily really great humans. And I think a lot of people caught on to it.
Well, check me out. If we want to full circle the pod, we could hypothesize that perhaps they are a little too burnt out and maybe they have lost focus of what actually mattered.
Perhaps.
And this could have been
remedied. I have a feeling you know who I'm talking about here, but
honestly, because you've worked with so many people and you have so many stories, I'm not dead on it, and that's fine. Like it literally doesn't matter. Yeah. Like it doesn't. But I love the lessons and the examples that can be learned, positive and negative, and it is cool to specifically get into the weeds with this conversation and talk about this, because it's like, this is where I feel like there's learning to be had, and like where it's like, damn, like Adam has some years in, like let me prod and ask some questions here. I feel like we're probably right around our time mark though. Yeah. Did I miss anything integral to the story? What is the pronunciation on that? Integral? Integral. I always say integral, but it's not. It's integral. Did I miss anything? It's not integral. Yeah, I know. That's what it is. It's my Integra days.
Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, there's always like all these weird small things here and there, you know, but I think we've captured it.
Oh yeah. I think so too. I mean, this was great. Like this is, to me, a perfect episode of learning a story. There's so much about your story that I didn't know that I learned. And then on top of that, getting into like actionable advice that somebody listening to this can really start thinking with. But like, you know, hopefully somebody hears this and they don't burn out. Hopefully we saved someone a little bit of burnout, and hopefully managers and artists have a slightly better rapport because they understand that respect.
Go see a shrink.
That, dude, that's a big one too, that it doesn't even matter like what you believe in or where you come from or what that therapy is. but just like finding that, like finding
it's really
what
nice to have
works.
somebody to call you out on your bullshit.
Yeah,
to be honest with
yeah.
you. And trust me, my therapist, he calls me out on my bullshit a lot of times, you know. And then there's certain times where I have nothing to say and we have nothing to talk about and we just shoot the shit. You know, but it's nice to have somebody who's completely objective, who doesn't give a shit if you work in the music business or not,
right?
Or any of that stuff, and just says, you know, tells you you're being an asshole, or you know, tells you to calm down. It gives you perspective. Right. It's hard, you know, to gain perspective, and I think I've been going to therapy for years now.
Yeah.
And it's really helped me. I think stay in the music business.
That's cool.
You know, it's helped me gain and keep perspective.
Yeah, that's again great advice.
Yeah,
came on and dropped some bombs, my dude. This was good. This was really.
I don't know. I guess I did.
Well, we've been wanting to do this episode for so long, and I just like.
I honestly, I don't necessarily like doing press, so to speak, or whatever. Like, you know, we've talked about this.
I had been wanting to do this episode for so long.
You know, it's great. It's been a wonderful experience, but you know, I don't know if you know who Lou Wasserman is, but Lou Wasserman is the guy who founded MCA Pictures back in the 30s or 20s or whatever like that. And he had this saying: "Is to stay out of the spotlight because it fades your suit."
Oh, wow.
And I've really liked that saying because really it's not about me, you know, as a manager. It's about my artists. I don't go on panels. I don't do podcasts. I don't, except for this one. But I don't do a lot of that stuff because it's not about me and it's not about my success or any of that stuff. It's really about my artists.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I could challenge you on that, and I've had this discussion with a couple of like the very rare gems of folks that I've been able to get to do pods, is like, where I really appreciate it is like, that's awesome. That's so humble. And that is how it should be. Like with your team, like it is a more behind the scenes role. But when I was coming up in music and when I was trying to learn about it, and when I knew I wanted to be industry and I didn't want to be an artist, I didn't have a resource of information. Because these people don't talk.
Right.
And like, you can only DM people and ask them to get coffee so many times. Like they only have so much time, whatever.
Yeah. So
when people like yourself do take the time to just take an hour and talk about these things, it's like something like where you're sharing so much. And I really make a point on the podcast to make sure that I'm not just like going for only artists, because I think there's so much to learn from people like you. Mm-hmm. So like, that's where I'm extra appreciative, is like, I totally get it and I respect you staying out of it. But like when you share things like this, it's really helpful for the next generation.
I hope I can help.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I just want to be able to help.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you certainly have helped me along my journey, and I feel like this was a very helpful conversation. So thank you.
And your pedicure looks great.
Oh my God. We went with the aqua blue. For the listeners, it's completely done.
Yeah, it looks great.
This was this perfectly quiet salon, and it's great. Perfect. Tight. Bro, thank you, man. This was an honor.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. This is great.
This was really cool. So there it is, Adam's episode. I hope you got something out of that one. I feel like he's such a smart, rad dude with so much experience in the industry. It was a real honor to have him on. And a quick little note as well is there is a bonus episode with this podcast on the Where Are All My Friends Patreon. We did a quick little rapid fire round of some of his favorite content and media and things that inspire him. And you can find that at patreon.com/whereareallmyfriends. If you want to help the show in any way at all, even if it's not supporting on the Patreon, really just sharing these episodes with your friends that you think will get value out of them, telling your friends about the podcast has been the whole way that this has grown. And it is so appreciated on my end, and it's totally free. So if this episode was something that helped you and you know somebody that would enjoy it, send it to them, post it on socials, anything like that. If you want to go above and beyond even there, you can just rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe and leave a comment on YouTube. Any type of interaction with the podcast helps their discovery algorithms show it to more people, which is also immensely helpful. That's that. I hope you enjoy. As always, I'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for listening.